So what brought you here today?
I was actually quite fascinated by this exhibition. I've always been very interested in ancient Egypt and the pharaohs and that entire civilization. So I've come here today to find out what they found in Tutankhamun's tomb, and I'm quite impressed with what I'm seeing here today.
What is the most impressive thing you saw here today?
Well, I think the whole thing is quite impressive. The entire breakdown of what they've discovered in Tutankhamun's tomb is quite impressive. I didn't quite understand or know from the research and even some of the things that I've looked into in the past through documentaries and other things that I've seen, the great depth or the detail of what was actually discovered there. And so what I feel this exhibition has done really, really well is not only captured what the essence of the findings are, but it's taken it to the next level by actually breaking it down into different stages. So as you go through this exhibition, you get a really good feel as if you were in the Valley of the Kings and as if you were where they've discovered this amazing ancient 3,000 years or whatever it is old tomb, but then the breakdown of that, the breakdown of what's in there, the breakdown of what it all means. So I think that in itself is quite impressive.
And what do you think about the audio guide?
I thought it was really quite informative. I don't really like too much reading. I think reading is slow and it sometimes bores me because I'm a very visual person, and when I'm not practicing my visual senses and looking around, I don't mind auditory. So having it with me as an audio guide that then describes to me what's going on in detail really helps, because then I'm not having to read everything. I could be looking at the statue or the mummy and listening to the audio guide giving me the details, which is really cool.
Did you see anything that you were not expecting to see?
I think one of the really neat things about this exhibition and some of the things that are there is not only the fine detail and the breakdown of the findings and the discovery in the tomb, but also the I guess the part where they show or exhibit the mummification of the vital organs. And the whole sacred ceremony that happens around that, the protection part of that, as well as in having certain gods or goddesses that protect these vital organs through the transition into the afterlife and so on. I think that's really fascinating. I think also some of the preserved or replica papyrus inscripts are really interesting. My fascination of the ancient Egyptian culture and history stems back to my upbringing. I was born in Egypt, in Cairo, and I'm really fascinated, obviously, by my ancestors, but I'm fascinated by this ancient civilization because of how sophisticated they were. And quite often, what I think about, if we were to transport them in a time machine and bring them to 2016, I wonder what they would say about today's civilization, about what they'd say where they find themselves now, whether they feel they've gone backward in time or forward in time, because they had so much, technology, so much knowledge, so much, I say, sophistication as a civilization, and I feel that that's kind of been lost over time. What I would love to see, I mean, schools these days touch on the history and they touch on the civilizations of the past and I guess the indigenous people of different civilizations, whether it's the Mayans or the ancient Egyptians. But I wonder if it could go into more detail, and I wonder if some of those cultural, traditional things that they practiced back then could be explored, and if we could find in today how it could be useful to us in whatever way, shape or form. One of the real amazing things that I find as an amazing discovery about ancient Egypt as a civilization in itself is the mummification process. So here they were, a civilization that believed in the afterlife, and through the mummification they believed that this is preserving the body for the afterlife. Well, what's happened with today's technology and in today's society is we've been able to take the mummies, or some of those mummies, and analyze them for DNA. Now, back then, they probably didn't know that that kind of technology existed or could exist, but I feel that's a form of an afterlife in itself, right? Because we are able to get this DNA extraction and find out a lot more about the information. So what are some of the findings from that? From my research, I've realized that by analysing the DNA of these mummies, they were able to trace or look at the ancestry or the bloodline, and I feel what they've done with that is, looking at modern day Egypt and people around the Nile, they found that the Coptic people, which are the direct descendants of the pharaohs, they are what would be believed in today's terms as the indigenous or the original people of the land of Egypt through the pharaohs. And so that's interesting, because then we're able to track this bloodline through the DNA, and I think that's quite fascinating. I would highly recommend for people in Perth to come down here while this exhibition's on. It basically means they don't have to, travel around the world to go and see such amazing detail and learn about the ancient Egyptian civilization and Tutankhamun's tomb and his treasures. They can simply do this by just coming to the Perth Convention Centre and spending some time here. I think it's a fascinating exhibition, and this would appeal to people from school-age students to, I think, as old as people want to be in terms of the senior citizens in our community. They can come down here and spend a good couple of hours